The gym was loud. Metal plates slammed together. Music thumped through the walls. Voices overlapped, laughing, shouting, showing off. Iron Dominion Gym was the kind of place where size decided respect. In the middle of all that noise, one man stood quietly in the stretching corner. No crowd around him, no phone out, no flexing in the mirror. Just slow, controlled movements. A group of young lifters noticed him almost immediately. Loose hoodie. Worn sneakers, calm posture. He didn't belong. At least that's what they thought. One of them smirked. "Yo, you see this guy?" Another glanced over and laughed. "What is he doing here?" "Warm-ups for bingo night." The laughter spread. A few nearby people looked over. Some smiled. Others turned back to their workouts, pretending not to notice. The man didn't react. He moved from one stretch to the next, breathing evenly, as if the noise didn't exist. That only encouraged them. "Careful, Grandpa," one of the bullies said loudly. "This gym eats guys like you alive." Still nothing. No glance. No response. One of them stepped closer. "So what? You mute or something?" The quiet man slowly tightened the strap on his gloves. That was it. No rush. No panic. Just calm. The bullies exchanged looks. "Man's scared," one laughed. "Or maybe he's pretending to be some kind of tough guy." A few phones came out. Someone whispered, "This is gonna be good." The quiet man finally stood upright. Not stiff, not defensive, balanced, grounded. For a brief moment, something in his posture made the air feel different, but the bullies didn't notice. They were too busy laughing. "What's your name, old man?" one asked. "Or should we just call you Liability?" The man's eyes lifted slowly, calm, focused, unbothered. When he spoke, his voice was low and steady. "Mockery is easy," he said. "Control is rare." The laughter paused, just for a second. Then it exploded again. "Listen to him. He thinks he's some kind of philosopher." The man said nothing more. He adjusted his stance, because what they didn't know, what no one in that room understood yet, was that the quiet man they were mocking was Steven Seagal, and in a place built on ego, they had just challenged someone who had already mastered power long ago. Iron Dominion Gym never slept. Even in the late afternoon, the place was alive. Bars clanging, machines whining, bass, heavy music shaking the walls. Mirrors reflected rows of bodies chasing size, veins, and attention. This wasn't just a gym, it was a stage. And on that stage, the loudest men believed they were kings. The group that had noticed the quiet man first were regulars. Not champions, not professionals. Just big enough to feel important. Their tank tops clung tight, their arms pumped from constant flexing, their voices carried across the room like they owned the space. To them, strength was noise. They laughed between sets, slapped plates louder than necessary, and made sure everyone knew how much they lifted, or at least how much they claimed to lift. Newcomers learned quickly, either impress them or stay invisible. Then there was the quiet man. Steven Seagal remained in the stretching area, moving slowly, deliberately. Like time meant something different to him. Each motion was controlled, purposeful. He didn't rush. He didn't check the mirrors. He didn't look around for approval. It was as if the gym existed around him, not the other way around. One of the bullies leaned on a bench and watched him. "Man, look at this dude," he said. "Who stretches that long?" Another snorted. "People who can't lift." They laughed again. Steven finished a stretch and shifted to the mat, lowering himself with ease that didn't match his age. His breathing stayed steady. No strain, no wasted movement. That alone should have been a warning. But ego is loud, and it's also blind. "Hey," one of them called out. "You lost or something?" Steven didn't answer, not because he didn't hear them, but because he didn't need to. One of the younger members nearby hesitated, watching from the cable machine. He could feel it too. Something about the man didn't fit the picture they were painting. There was no nervousness in him, no stiffness, no uncertainty, just presence. The bullies mistook silence for weakness. One of them grabbed a barbell and re-racked it hard, making sure the noise echoed. "This place is for serious training," he said loudly. not light stretching and meditation. Stephen finally stood again. He adjusted his hoodie and walked toward the free weight area, passing them without a glance. That annoyed them more than any insult could have. "Did you see that?" one whispered. "He just ignored us." Respect, to them, was reaction, and they weren't getting it. "So what, old man?" another said, stepping into his path. "You think you're better than us?" Stephen stopped slowly. He looked at the man in front of him, not at his muscles, not at his face, but at his stance, his balance, his breathing. Then he spoke. "Strength without discipline is just noise," Stephen said calmly. "And noise fades fast." The words weren't loud, they didn't need to be. A couple of people nearby paused mid-rep. Someone turned down their headphones. The bullies blinked, surprised, then laughed harder. "Oh, we got a wise one." "Where'd you learn that, YouTube?" They circled slightly, feeding off each other's energy. Stephen didn't move, didn't raise his hands, didn't change his posture. He simply stood there, rooted. The kind of stillness that made movement unnecessary. That's when one of the bullies noticed something strange. The way Stephen stood. Knees soft, weight centered, shoulders relaxed, but ready, not sloppy, not casual, trained, not gym, trained. Something older, something real. The bully frowned. "Yo, you see how he's standing?" Another shrugged. "Man, stop overthinking." But the seed was planted. Stephen stepped past them again and walked toward the mats. Behind him, the laughter sounded thinner now, because for the first time, even without knowing who he was, they felt it. This man wasn't here to prove anything, and that made him dangerous. The moment Stephen walked away, the bullies felt it, not fear. Not yet, something worse. Disrespect. He hadn't argued. He hadn't reacted. He hadn't even acknowledged them, and for men who fed on attention, that silence was unbearable. "Did you see that?" one of them muttered. "He thinks he's untouchable." Another clenched his jaw. "Nah, he thinks he's invisible." They followed him toward the mat area, their footsteps heavy, deliberate. The music kept playing, but the energy in that section of the gym shifted. People began to sense it, the way animals do before a storm. Stephen knelt on the mat and began another stretch, slow and methodical. Behind him, a dumbbell rolled across the floor. It stopped inches from his hand. "Oops," one bully said, not sorry at all. "Careful, gym equipment bites." A few people laughed nervously. Stephen didn't flinch. He picked up the dumbbell, stood, and placed it back on the rack with precise control. No effort. No show. That restraint only fueled them. "Thought you'd cry by now." Stephen turned. Not suddenly, not aggressively, just enough to face them. "You're confusing noise with courage," he said evenly. "They aren't the same." That did it. One of the bullies stepped closer, chest puffed, breath heavy with arrogance. "You talking down to us?" Stephen's gaze stayed level. "I'm talking to you," he replied. The difference went over their heads. Phones began to rise again. Someone whispered, "This is about to go bad." The head bully, the biggest of them, laughed and spread his arms. "What, you gonna teach us discipline? You can barely move." Stephen looked at him calmly. "I can move just fine." The bully shoved him, not hard, not enough to start a fight, just enough to test him. The room went silent. Stephen took one step back, not from fear, but from balance, and reset his stance without breaking eye contact. That movement changed everything. The trainer across the gym stopped mid-conversation. The bullies felt it too, even if they didn't understand it. "You see that?" one whispered. He didn't stumble. The head bully scoffed and stepped in again. "Lucky step." Stephen's voice dropped. "Touch me again," he said quietly, "and you'll learn something you weren't ready for." The words weren't a threat. They were a statement. People nearby backed away. No one wanted to be close anymore. The bully laughed loudly, but there was tension behind it now. "You hear this guy?" He raised his hands in mock fighting stance. Stephen didn't mirror him. He stayed relaxed. Loose, that was worse. "Man, you don't even look ready," the bully mocked. "That's because I am," Stephen replied. The air felt heavy. Time slowed. Everyone was watching. The bully lunged forward, sloppy, emotional, unbalanced. In that instant, Stephen moved. Not fast efficient. He stepped inside the attack, redirected the momentum, and the bully found himself on the mat before he could process what happened. No slam, no violence, just control. The gym froze. Stephen released him immediately and stepped back. "Enough," Stephen said. The bully scrambled up, face flushed, not with pain but humiliation. "What the hell was that?" someone muttered. The trainer's eyes were wide now. "That wasn't luck," he whispered. The bullies didn't laugh anymore, they stared. For the first time, ego cracked, because they realized something terrifying. This man had held back, and whatever they thought strength was, they had never actually seen it before. For a moment, nobody spoke. Not because they were told to be quiet, but because no one knew what to say. The music was still playing, but it sounded distant now, like it belonged to another room. A barbell clanked somewhere, then stopped abruptly. Even the mirrors seemed to hold their breath. The bully who had been taken down stood frozen on the mat, not hurt, not injured, just exposed. His chest rose and fell faster than it should have. His eyes darted around, searching for laughter that never came. Stephen stood a few steps away, hands relaxed at his sides. He hadn't flexed, hadn't raised his voice, hadn't claimed victory. That made it worse. People began to whisper. What just happened? He didn't even hit him. Did you see how fast that was? The other bullies backed away instinctively, their confidence draining in real time. They hadn't expected resistance, especially not from someone they'd written off as weak. The head trainer slowly made his way over, eyes locked on Stephen's posture, balanced, centered, ready. Even now, the trainer had seen fights before. Gym fights, street fights. This wasn't either. This was control. "You okay?" the trainer asked the bully on the mat. The man nodded quickly, embarrassed. Yeah, I'm fine." But his voice shook. Stephen finally spoke again, calm as ever. "I told you to stop," he said. "I don't come here to prove anything." His eyes moved across the group, not angry, not threatening, just disappointed. That look cut deeper than words. One of the younger bullies swallowed hard. "Man, what kind of training is that?" Stephen didn't answer immediately. He knelt back down, adjusted the mat, and continued stretching, as if nothing had happened. That confused everyone. He wasn't escalating. He wasn't dominating. He was done. The trainer crouched slightly, lowering his voice. "Sir, are you sure you're okay?" Stephen glanced at him. "I'm fine," he replied. The trainer understood exactly what he meant. Around them, people pretended to resume their workouts, but no one actually focused. Eyes kept drifting back. The atmosphere had changed permanently. The bullies gathered near the water fountain, whispering urgently. That was weird. He moved before I even saw it. That wasn't normal. The head bully clenched his jaw. He got lucky. But even he didn't believe it. The trainer stood up slowly and looked at Stephen more closely now. Not as a random member, but as someone familiar. The stance, the calm, the efficiency. A memory surfaced. Old seminars. Demonstrations. Stories instructors whispered about. His eyes widened. "No way," he muttered. Stephen caught the look and gave a small nod. That was enough. The trainer's posture changed immediately, respectful, cautious. He walked toward the front desk, whispering urgently to the assistant manager. "Check the system," he said. "Now." The assistant frowned. "Why? Just do it." Behind them, the bullies noticed the shift. "Why's he acting like that?" one whispered. The assistant manager typed quickly, then froze. Mark." The trainer leaned in. The assistant turned the screen slightly. The name, the membership notes. The trainer exhaled slowly. "That's him," he said quietly. Back on the mat, Stephen finished his stretch and rose smoothly to his feet. He felt the eyes on him now. Not mocking, not challenging. Watching. He walked toward the free weights again, passing the bullies without slowing down. They stepped aside, automatically, no words exchanged. One of them tried to speak, but nothing came out. Stephen picked up a light kettlebell, not to lift, but to feel the balance. His movements were economical, precise. No wasted motion. The trainer approached cautiously. "Mr. Seagal," he said. The name landed like a dropped weight. Heads turned, the bullies stiffened. Stephen looked at him. "Yes," the trainer swallowed. "I didn't realize you were a member here." Stephen gave a faint smile. "I usually prefer it that way." The gym was silent now, because everyone finally understood. This wasn't a lucky move. This wasn't a fluke. They hadn't just mocked a quiet man. They had tested someone who had spent a lifetime mastering restraint. And the room would never feel the same again. The name didn't echo. It settled. Mr. Seagal. At first it didn't register. A few people blinked, trying to connect the sound to the man standing calmly near the kettlebells. The bullies exchanged confused looks, waiting for laughter that never came. One of them forced a chuckle. "Seagal? Like the actor?" The trainer didn't smile. "Yes," he said. "That's Steven Seagal." The room shifted again, deeper this time. Phones slowly lowered, whispers died mid-sentence. Someone near the squat rack mouthed, "No way." Stephen didn't react to the recognition. He simply placed the kettlebell back on the rack and adjusted his gloves, as if names meant nothing to him. The head bully felt his throat tighten. "You're serious?" he asked, his voice suddenly smaller. The trainer nodded. "Black belt, martial artist, instructor long before the movies." Silence. Not awkward silence. Heavy silence. The kind that forces people to replay their last few minutes in painful detail. One of the bullies swallowed hard. Then, "Why didn't you say anything?" Stephen finally looked at him directly. "Because respect shouldn't depend on reputation," he said calmly. "You either have it or you don't." That hurt more than the takedown. The head bully took a step back. "We were just messing around." Stephen's eyes didn't harden. They didn't soften either. "Mockery is never just anything," he replied. "It reveals character." The trainer cleared his throat, uncomfortable now. "I apologize, Mr. Seagal. This behavior won't happen again." Stephen turned slightly. "I'm not here for apologies," he said. "I'm here to train." The simplicity of it stunned them. No speech, no lecture, no demand, just discipline. The bullies stood there, exposed. Their muscles suddenly felt useless. All the noise they had built their identity on meant nothing now. One of them finally spoke. "That move earlier. You could have hurt him." Stephen nodded once. "Yes." A pause. "But I didn't." That was the lesson. The head bully rubbed his face, shame creeping in. "We didn't know who you were." Stephen met his eyes. "That's exactly why this matters." He turned away, ending the conversation without drama. The trainer watched him walk toward the mat area again, then looked back at the group. "You're done for today," he said quietly. No argument, no resistance. They gathered their things in silence. As they passed Stephen, none of them met his eyes. Wone stopped briefly. "I'm sorry," he muttered. Stephen didn't answer, not because he didn't hear it, but because apologies without understanding don't change much. Around the gym, people resumed their workouts, but the atmosphere was different now. Quieter, more focused. Conversations lowered, movements became more deliberate. Respect had entered the room. Stephen began his routine again. Slow forms, controlled breathing, movements that looked simple but carried weight. Those who understood training recognized it immediately. This wasn't performance. This was mastery. The trainer stood nearby, arms crossed, watching closely. Stephen nodded slightly. "That's why they never improve." The trainer smiled faintly. "You're welcome here, anytime." Stephen returned the smile. "Barely. I know." As he continued training, the whispers spread. Not gossip now, but admiration. "That's him. He didn't even try. That's real strength." Stephen ignored it all. Because the reveal wasn't about fame, it was about contrast. About what happens when ego collides with discipline. And for the bullies who walked out that day, the truth followed them heavier than any weight they had ever lifted. They hadn't been humbled by a celebrity. They had been exposed by a master. The gym didn't return to normal. Not that day, not after what everyone had witnessed. It wasn't fear that lingered in the air. It was awareness. The bullies were gone now, their lockers empty, their laughter replaced by an uncomfortable quiet. In their absence, the gym felt larger, calmer, as if something unnecessary had been removed. Stephen remained. He moved through his routine with the same unhurried discipline he had shown from the moment he walked in. Each motion flowed into the next, controlled, efficient, purposeful. No mirrors, no audience. But this time, people watched differently. They weren't staring out of curiosity anymore. They were observing, trying to understand. A young man near the cable machines paused his workout, eyes fixed on Stephen's footwork. A woman on the treadmill slowed her pace just to see how his balance never wavered. Even seasoned lifters found themselves studying his breathing. The trainer approached again, keeping a respectful distance. "You train like this every day?" he asked quietly. Stephen nodded. Consistency matters more than intensity. The trainer absorbed that. That's not how most people think. Stephen offered a small smile. That's why most people plateau. The word spread through the gym faster than the music ever had. A few minutes later, one of the bullies returned. Alone, he hesitated at the edge of the mat area, hands fidgeting, confidence gone. The others noticed but didn't say anything. Stephen finished a sequence and stood upright. "Yes," he asked calmly. The man cleared his throat. I just wanted to say something." Stephen waited. "I've been coming here for years," the man said. "Lifting heavy, getting bigger, thinking that was everything." He paused. "Today, I realized I don't know anything." Stephen studied him for a moment, not judging, not approving. "Realizing that is the beginning," he said. "If you're honest with it." The man nodded slowly. "I was wrong." Stephen didn't respond. He didn't need to. That silence was acceptance enough. The man stepped back and left again, lighter, somehow. Even without lifting, the trainer exhaled. "You didn't humiliate him," he said. "You could have." Stephen adjusted his gloves. "Humiliation teaches nothing," he replied. "Experience does?" The trainer looked around the gym. People were re-racking weights properly. Spotters were paying attention. Conversations had shifted from bragging to technique. Respect had replaced noise. "You changed the atmosphere," the trainer said. Stephen shook his head. "They did," he replied. "They just needed a mirror." As Stephen finished his session, he wiped down the mat and returned the equipment exactly where it belonged. Small actions, big meaning. At the exit, the trainer stopped him. "Anytime you want a private space, or to teach, just say the word." Stephen paused. "I don't teach in gyms," he said, "but I appreciate the offer." The trainer nodded. "Fair enough." Stephen stepped outside into the evening light. Behind him, Iron Dominion Gym continued, but not the same way it had before. Inside, the story would be told again and again. Not as a fight, not as a celebrity encounter, but as a reminder. That strength without control is fragile. That noise is not power. That the quietest person in the room may be the most dangerous or the most disciplined. Stephen walked away without looking back. Because true resolution doesn't announce itself. It leaves change behind. The story didn't end with a punch. It ended with a pause. Long after Seagal walked out of Iron Dominion Gym, his presence stayed behind. Not in fear, not in embarrassment, but in reflection. People lifted differently that day. They spoke differently. Some barely spoke at all because something important had been exposed. Strength isn't loud. The loudest voices in the gym that afternoon were also the weakest. Not physically, but mentally. They confused attention with authority, size with dominance, noise with power. And they paid for that mistake, not with pain, but with truth. Stephen never raised his voice. Never boasted, never reminded anyone who he was. He didn't need to. Because real power doesn't demand recognition, it reveals itself through control. The bullies learned something most people never do. Muscles can impress, but they don't command respect. Respect comes from discipline, from restraint, from knowing exactly how much force is enough. That lesson stayed with them longer than any workout. For the others watching, It was a quiet wake-up call. The man they mocked didn't arrive seeking validation. He came to train, to refine, to maintain something built over decades, not for mirrors, not for applause, but for himself. And that difference mattered, because humility is the foundation of mastery. When ego enters a room, learning leaves. When humility enters, growth begins. Steven Seagal didn't. When that day, he didn't need to. Winning is temporary. Influence lasts. The gym became calmer after that. Not perfect, but better. New members were treated with more patience. The loudest egos softened, and when someone new walked in quietly, fewer people laughed. They remembered. And that's the real ending, not the reveal of a name. Not the recognition of fame, but the shift in behavior. The reminder that you never truly know who someone is by how they look, how they dress, or how loudly they speak. Sometimes, the quietest person in the room is quiet because they've already proven everything they need to prove. So before you mock someone, before you underestimate someone, before you confuse silence with weakness, remember this: true strength doesn't flex, it doesn't shout, it doesn't chase attention. It waits. Because when power is real, it has nothing to prove. Type respect if you believe humility is the highest form of strength. And tell me, where are you watching from? I read every comment.